All right, on this episode of Bouts Talking Bouts, happy to be talking to PFA owner and instructor. Been involved in coaching both mixed martial arts and Muay Thai since 1999. I've got Brad Wall on the program. How's your day going so far there, Brad?
Oh, day's going pretty good. Busy. Just got done teaching a few lessons, training some fighters right now, and just a little bit of time to take a break and do this interview.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious about like some of the stuff that's on the horizon for you guys, because you guys always seem, really busy with like Muay Thai competition and, various MMA competitions and stuff like that. It seems like Lucas Neufeld has a big fight coming up for that Fight Night Lethbridge card in September, but what else is on the horizon for some of the guys at Progressive Fighting Academy?
Okay, yeah, we got lots of things going on, so lots of possible fights on the horizon. I've been talking with the guys from Fight Night. They really want to, start pushing their brand a little bit more and putting on more and more events, which is awesome. And then, always talking and works with other promotions. We love going down to the States as well as throughout Canada. So it gives our guys lots of opportunity. So we've got some big fights coming up too. The Muay Thai World Cup in Calgary. Cody Jerome is fighting a four-man Muay Thai tournament at the end of November for that. And, in between there, we've got lots of fights for amateurs as well. We've got fights in August coming up down in the States. Then, as well as September, we're back down in the States. And then the 28th for the Fight Night here in Lethbridge. And, other than that, just whatever else comes up for promotions, we're always looking.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of mentioned some amateur competition, and I was kind of curious about your thoughts on just like the amateurs that went down earlier on in the year when Lee Meehan did everything there in April. Like, I was curious if you checked out the fights, and if so, what your thoughts were on the proceedings and the few days of amateur MMA that went down there.
Yeah, they had looked like they had some great fights. Great competitions. Got to watch a few of the fights, and so that was awesome. There's some really high level athletes competing, and it was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess to the point of amateur MMA, I'd heard an interview with Lee Meehan and some other individuals who were talking to Joel Griffith. Bill Mahood was also involved in the interview, and they were kind of indicating that while amateur MMA has grown by leaps and bounds in Canada in a localized kind of way, that maybe on an international level, some of the other amateur MMA scenes are kind of ahead of where we're at. Do you share that sentiment? And if so, what needs to be done for us to level up in the amateur scene?
Well, I guess my philosophy is, might be the same or might be a little bit different. I think of I don't mind things like tournaments in a sense of I used to compete in tournaments in Muay Thai all the time and kickboxing, but now as I'm coaching, I'm not as fond myself of doing amateur tournaments because I don't think necessarily, let's say, a guy gets 4 fights in one weekend is going to be the same as a fighter with 4 fights over a year and a half kind of thing, where they're preparing for each and every individual fight. So that's where I see some things being a little bit different. A lot of gyms have the philosophy of they don't even allow their athletes to fight until they get a blue belt in jiu-jitsu or they're at a certain level, and that makes it tough, because a lot of the amateurs are coming out very skilled, which I think that anybody to compete should be skilled. You should have a certain amount of training, a certain amount of sparring, and with that being said, you don't want, especially with something like MMA, it's combat related, so why take a ton of punishment? So I'm not too fond on seeing athletes take a ton of punishment. I know myself, like I said, having competed in Muay Thai and kickboxing tournaments and that sort of thing. You know, getting 4 or 5 fights was great over a weekend, but I look at my long-term health, and I don't know necessarily if that helped me too much in the sense of, like, I probably took more punishment than needed.
Yeah, I get what you mean. At the time, you see it through this competitor lens of I want to get out there as much as I can and compete and kind of like get the reps in, so to say. But now that you're a coach, you kind of see like a big picture, kind of like long-term perspective for these guys that's maybe outside of like the competitive kind of like braggadocio. Like I'll get out there and, you know, beat X amount of guys in a short period of time.
Yeah. So it like, I'm not saying that I wouldn't put my fighters into a tournament. Like I said, I've got Cody Jerome fighting in the Muay Thai World Cup, but now I feel like he's at a level where, you know, he's not going to take as much damage, when he has not ever taken any damage to this point in his career where he's ever had a concussion or anything like that, which to me is like very important, because you have to reassess as a coach and as an athlete. If you're, you know, taking a little bit too much punishment, you know, maybe it's time to slow things down and focus on some other things rather than continually, you know, putting yourself in a position where, as much as I love fighting, you know, the health and the rest of your life is just as important. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to be looking at it long term for sure.
Yeah.
But
so as a coach, I don't know, like, I can't say that every coach shares my philosophy, but that's kind of, you know, for me, long-term health for my athletes is just as important as, you know, the short-term goals of them wanting to win a title or win a fight and that sort of thing.
absolutely. But speaking to the point of thinking long term, you were talking about Fight Night wanting to bolster their presence that much more and get out there. I noticed that Progressive Fighting Academy is going to be the official gym of Fight Night. When did dialogue get going surrounding that, and how did that agreement come about?
You know, like, we've always had a good relationship with them, and we're just talking and you know, just kind of sharing ideas with the matchmaker and the promoter, Tom Fiddler himself, and Keith Guy, and we just, like, you know, chatting back and forth, and it was kind of a, I guess, a mutual thing, and I was like, yeah, that sounds great. You know, anything we can do to help, you know, promote your show, that's great, and vice versa. They were like, well, we want to help promote your gym and everything, and to me, I've promoted in the past, and my love and passion is coaching. It's not so much promoting. So, you know, the fact that he was, you know, coming in as like, I'm solely a promoter. I want to promote for the love of promoting. I don't want to own a gym. I was like, you know, that's just like a perfect partnership to me.
Yeah, that works perfectly because I was there for when you did the King of the Cage show, and I mean, it looked great and ran smoothly and everything like that, but you kind of indicated that to me as such, just in the sense of you enjoyed it to, I guess, a degree, but it's not something you'd want to do in any kind of regular, regimented way. So to get somebody on board who's going to be like a regular promoter and satisfy that end while you satisfy the training, like you said, yeah, it seems like a perfect partnership. So good to see that come together, because it seems like it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's where, like, I really enjoyed working with King, the Cage, and Ken. That was a great job, but I just felt like I was still having to be involved too much on the promotion side of things, and I just to focus on the coaching side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to translate into a lot of good shows and everything like that. So is there going to be like a lot of PFA signage that's going to be like on the cage and certain things like that, and some like the promo packages for Fight Night going forward?
I haven't really talked to him in that sense so much. I know that we've got we're going to have another meeting here fairly soon and hash out some of those kind of details, but I haven't really, you know, thought in that way, in that sense about it. I think that anytime, though, like, you can get your athletes televised exposure, that's huge for them, and moving forward, that's something that you know, we want to get to that next level. And I also think too, like, it's awesome just to basically be put in a situation where here's the matchup and here's the fight, you know, train for it, rather than like being so worried about finding, finding a matchup and, matchmaking, and then, coaching and that sort of thing. So that's kind of, I guess, a focus of our dialogue so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned that King of the Cage Canada card that you put on, and I think one of the more indelible moments from that card was Tom O'Connor's big victory in the main event. And to that point, I'm kind of curious, like, what the present status on Tom O'Connor is, in as far as when he's looking to get back there and compete. Because I saw he last competed about a year or so ago with that Diablo fight series, and then a couple, injuries kind of getting in the way after that. So I'm kind of curious as to like where Tom O'Connor's at, like if there's any tentative schedule for him coming back or anything of that sort.
Yeah, we're looking at the possibility of, and that's where I'm in contact with. Tom's got a manager, and his manager is the same manager that manages Teddy Ash and Tanner Bowser, and so it's kind of a new direction for me as a coach. Again, I'm allowed more to focus on just coaching rather than managing him, and so my goal as a coach is to start getting Tom back into tip-top shape. And basically Tom's had a few injuries, back injuries, and it's unfortunately, it's one of those things as you get to a higher level, when you're competing and putting your body in that situation, it can be sometimes tough. So we're trying to get him back to tip-top shape, where he's healthy and not having to put him in situations where he's also like half injured and then fighting. As I know, like lots of fighters will go into fights and they're going to be taking so much damage just to get prepared that it's always something you're gonna risk a little bit of injury, but especially with things like back injuries, neck injuries, that can lead to concussions and post-concussion type syndrome things. Those are kind of like things we're just trying to work out for him, so he is at a tip-top level where we can get him to the next level and we can keep him healthy, because he's still a young guy as well. So.
Yeah, I didn't know he was represented by Epoch Agency. Is that like a relatively new sort of thing for Tom?
You know what? They've been in talks for probably the last, I'm going to say, 6 months. And, we kind of like, I kind of told Tom, too, like that I felt like, for me as a coach, that's kind of like the next level. I'd like him to start looking for some quality management. That way I can, like I said, focus on the coaching aspect of things.
Yeah, and that would be a good look for a guy like Tom, who's like pretty reputable at both 145 and also 155. And with EPOK, we've also seen like, Tanner get that upcoming shot that he has with UFC, and then Teddy getting on Contender Series. So it could translate into some pretty big looks for Tom. I think that'd be pretty intriguing going forward.
For sure. And that's like, that's something that I think a lot of fighters basically get into competition, and as they start to, have those, dreams that they, there's lots of fighters who just fight for the sake of fighting because they love fighting. But I think that most fighters have that, dream of getting to that next level. It's like a hockey player, wanting to get to the show someday. It's like that's a very close possibility for Tom. Just basically, the number one thing for him is just going to keep it healthy.
Yeah, exactly. That's been like really the only X factor with a guy like Tom. But I wanted to talk about Colton Menzak interview I had a little while ago. He was talking about how important PFA is, not just for like the high level martial arts insights that he gets, but because there's that camaraderie and there's the tight knit bonds that exist among those who train at the gym. As a trainer and everything like that, you talk a lot about focusing on being a trainer and everything like that. How do you go about like cultivating and creating that sort of positive gym culture there?
Well, I think that comes with, spending, hours upon hours with, individual athletes, and you don't only share time with like them in just a group setting, but you share individual time with all of them. Like there's times that I will call, you know, Colton, or I will call like Lucas Neufeld, and we'll just have just chats on the phone and just say, hey, like how's things going, and you know, just I'm more worried about them in the sense of like as a coach, like their whole, you know, life. How are things in life, and not just training, and not just worried about just fighting alone, because yeah, the gym is more than just that, and we've got lots of athletes who, for instance, have been retired for many years, but I can call on those guys and say, hey, you know, this guy needs help for his upcoming fight. Somebody like a Tanner Tolman, I'll say, hey, Tanner, like you're a big guy, like a good quality wrestler. I need some help with this guy. Can I call on you? And you know, that just because that comes from you know, having a you know, a friendship and that sort of thing with the athletes, rather than just looking at them as just strictly an athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. Get to know them as like a person and like their outside interests, what's going on in their life, and just stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that any quality gym, like, you know, cares about you know, I guess any business in that sense. You know, if they're just a customer to you and they're just like a number, you know, then that's kind of like you know, how it's going to be. But if you look at like a business and your customers are also, you know, you want to know things about your customers and you have relationship with them, you know, they're probably going to be the people who are, you know, going to come back to you time and time again, because you're not only just a business, but they know that you care for them and you want the best for them.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you've been really great with your time. I'm curious, though, if there's anything you want to sort of add as a parting thought as we're wrapping things up here.
You know, the only thing I would add is like we've got a new facility. We've been here for a couple months, and we're always welcome, you know, people to train at our gym. Like you don't have to be a member solely of PFA. We always welcome people from other gyms to come and check us out. If whether they're stopping by or they're just looking for a new gym to train at, you know, come check us out.
Yeah, it's a great looking facility. I saw the video and I've seen a bunch of pictures from the tour and stuff like that, and it's great to see that Progressive Fighting Academy now has, you know, another facility to operate out of. It's good.
Yeah, yeah. We're really happy with it, so.
Yeah, definitely a good look, and it seems like a lot's coming up, both with that fight night card, and you talk about a lot of Muay Thai competition, and I mean, yeah, Rumble in the Cage with a fall card too, so a lot on the horizon it seems, but really appreciate
in the area, which is great. And yeah, that's one of the things. Even the competitions last week, you know, CMC had a jiu-jitsu competition. We had athletes from our gym going to represent, and of course like CMC, other gyms from places like Calgary. It was awesome. It just you know, it's just great to have you know, competition for everybody, and competition in that sense is like, you know, it's fun. It's you just build up more camaraderie between gyms and your own team as well.
Absolutely, and people should be checking out Progressive Fighting Academy on social media and giving them follows and everything like that. Great talk with the owner and also an instructor, Brad Wall. Again, appreciate all the time and insights, man, and hope you have a great rest of your day too.
Okay, you too. Thanks a lot, Dylan. Take care.